Good evening, everyone, and a very, very loving welcome to everyone tonight. And thank you, as always, Jackie. And in fact, I was in Melbourne last week, and I was staying at Baxter, but the lockdown happened on Thursday. And as Jackie will tell you, I rushed to the airport and flew back to Sydney. So I'm back in Sydney now, but the beauty of our technology these days is that we can still connect and communicate. And the wonder is even meditate together, like those few minutes, that lovely vibration. And the wonder of the human mind is that it's beyond time and space. So the vibrations of my meditation reach us wherever we are. So tonight I would like to share a few of my thoughts, and then there will be plenty of time for some discussion, some questions, and we'll finish with a little bit of meditation experience once again. The power of humility. As Jackie was saying, really, virtues are really huge powers in life, huge powers. They're like the beauty of life. They're like the wealth, the true wealth of the human spirit. When the human spirit is filled with love, with respect, with humility, with gentleness, it's a beautiful spirit, a beautiful soul, and a beautiful life. And yet we live in such a deceptive world, if I can say, such a strange world, that sometimes strength appears as weakness. Weakness appears as strength. Truth appears as falsehood. Falsehood appears as truth. Many people feel today we really have no idea where the truth is lying. And I have a friend in London who's a diamond merchant. He's a very, very old friend. And he was telling me some years ago, actually, that the false diamonds are so good, even the experts can't tell whether they're true or false. I think it's a good metaphor for the world in which we live, because we live in a world where one of the greatest virtues, the power of humility, is often seen as a weakness. And we live in a world where sometimes ego, force, domination, control is seen as a strength. And yet humility is born out of true awareness of the self, true self-respect, and I would say a deep, deep love and connection with God. The result of all those things is that it installs this incredible humility. Perhaps we could say that the ego is taken out of the self. And really, in human relationships, there is nothing more attractive than humility. When someone demonstrates humility, our heart just goes out to them. And in one way, I would say a lot of the spiritual journey is the journey to becoming humble. The one with humility is not offended, does not get hurt, and does not feel insulted. When something offends me, when I feel insulted, that's my ego accepting the insult. And really, when I feel insulted, I should realize that I'm under the influence of my false self and not my true self. The one with humility is content. They love to see others having success. They love to see others going in front. They have no desire for a position because they feel satisfied deep inside. The one with humility wins love from the hearts of everyone. Is there anything more beautiful in life than a life where whoever you come in front of, because of your vibration of humility, which is a vibration of love and respect and regard, you just automatically win love. This is such a treasure in life, such a beautiful life. The one with humility respects everybody. The one with humility respects those who agree with me and those who don't agree with me. I'm quite happy for people to have their own views and their own opinions and their own outlook in life. The one with humility accepts difference, doesn't feel threatened by someone who has a different belief system, has a different outlook on life. That's fine. In fact, they enjoy the richness and the diversity of life. The one with humility will have a vision of equality. They don't feel superior to anyone, but they don't feel inferior to anyone. It's like they see everyone as a brother or a sister. The one with humility offers mercy to all. Because of that humility, I don't judge. Can't you see why you're unhappy? Can't you see why this is going on? So all the judgmental and critical thoughts can flood through the mind. No, the one with humility can see beyond that and see that the person is suffering, and so will offer mercy. So really, humility is such a great power. And yet, I would say in all my experience of giving little talks like this and, giving spiritual, shall we say, lessons or whatever, one of the most common questions is that, but if you're humble, won't everyone walk all over you? Won't they just kick you around? And you know what? As soon as I hear that, I feel this person has not understood humility at all, hasn't even come, because they see a humility which is a sort of a subservience, a begging, putting myself down, a submissive type of, that's not humility. Humility is coming from a place of absolute self-respect and inner dignity. It's a place of incredible strength. But the external form is very gentle, very sweet, very open. The one with humility will listen genuinely, not listen, just half listen and only think what I need to say. No, they will really listen to the hearts of others. And this is why with all these qualities, the one with humility is incredibly successful in life, I would say. And especially when a leader has humility, that is incredibly powerful. And yet in this world, how many crises are there in our world? And I promise you, I'm not going to talk about them tonight because I know we're just all over listening to crises, crises, crises. But often I feel leadership is one of the great crises because, a true leader is there to serve. The whole idea of leadership is to serve a group, serve a community, serve a family. But today, because we lack self-respect so deeply, people want a leader's role, because it makes me feel better about who I am. My vision on myself might be low, might be negative. And so when I have a role, when I have a title, whatever it may be, I'm in charge of something, I have a sense of self-value. So rather than having self-value naturally, I need something external to prop up my self-value. And as a result, there's a lot of ego of my position, my leadership role, my title. And so when it's threatened, I fight, I insult, I react. And really, I began with the Brahma Kumaris in London. It's nearly 46 years ago, about 46 years ago. And I was really touched by the natural humility of the sisters. And after a few months, I visited India, where the headquarters of the Brahma Kumaris is in Mount Abu. And as I think you all know, it's the world's largest spiritual group in the world run by women. And the woman who was the head of the organization touched me so deeply. She was so great, so lovely, so loving, so special, but so humble. She had zero ego of her role, and it was so incredibly powerful that when a leader is great and yet also humble, it has such an impact. And I remember once I went with a film crew to New York, and we were making a film called Women of Spirit, which was about this incredibly unique university that has women as leaders. And we met a man called Dr. James Jonah, who was the Under Secretary General of the United Nations for Political Affairs. So that means that he was dealing with all the leaders of the world, the presidents of America and Russia and you name it. And I asked him, I interviewed him, and I said, who's the most impressive leader you have met? And straight away he said, Dadi Prakashmani, who was the lady, the sister who was the head of the Brahma Kumaris. I said, why? And he said, because she led with humility. She led with love. She didn't lead with a clever intellect, but she led by the example and treated everyone with so much love and respect. And really, that is so powerful when we see that in a leadership role. And so we're drawn to want to follow such a person. So it's a natural form of leadership. And yet, how would you describe the spiritual journey? You know, all of us who come on a talk like this, we're on the inner journey. And to me, one way of describing it is really dismantling my ego to give birth to a sense of self-value, self-respect, which automatically radiates humility. Perhaps even a more powerful way is it's like a death of the old self, a death of my ego. Excuse me. And really that death is really brings life back, true life back into life, if I can say. Because I would say the most destructive thing in my happiness and my relationships is my ego. And, you know, this life, this beautiful life of the spiritual journey is really an extraordinary life of change. And I think so many of us today, we really want to change. There's a social researcher here in Australia called Hugh Mackay. I'm sure many of you know of him. He's an extraordinary man, and for about 40, 50 years, he's gone around to ordinary Australians and just asked them, you know, how are you really feeling? What's happening inside? And he was the one who gave the title, The Age of Anxiety. Really, it's a worldwide phenomenon, but there's so much anxiety. And so many of us feel that, you know, we follow the life that we feel life is about. You know, we grow up, we get married, we have our children, we develop a career. And sometimes, you know, after a while with a true heart, but I feel completely unhappy. And sometimes I feel more than I'm just unhappy. I feel angry and resentful and negative. And I find I'm at this point of blaming the world and everyone around me for my misery and my unhappiness. Unfortunately, it's all too common in the world today. And he often says that in Australia, that's the point where many start to go on what we call the inner journey, where we realize that I have to do something for me. I have to change myself. And he says that the greatest step on this inner journey to really know who I am, experience who I am, regrow the power of humility in my life is to take responsibility for how I feel. And to me, I think when someone has the courage and the honesty to say, I am responsible for how I feel, I open the doorway to a truth. I'm now under the canopy of truth. As long as I'm blaming everyone, I'm blaming the world, and I'm under the canopy of falsehood, I'm deceiving myself. And yet, when I start on this journey to take responsibility for how I feel and begin to change my life, and I look at my life and I think, where do I start? There's so much to change. I want to change my negativity. I want to get rid of my anger. I want to, let go the hurt. I want to let go the, all sorts of things. I want to forgive. There's so many things I want to do. And I think sometimes, we even have a little bit of stress thinking, where does it all begin? But to me, the first step, or the main step, even I could say the shortcut to self-transformation, is to rebuild my self-respect, my self-value, my inner dignity. And in a way, the death of the ego is rebuilding the beauty inside again, reconnecting with my real beauty, who I really am inside. And automatically that gives birth to the huge power of humility. Goethe, the French, the German philosopher, I'm not traveling Europe accurately at the moment. He once said, the greatest ill to befall man is to think ill of himself. And I would say that most of us are almost addicted to thinking ill of myself. I just can't stop having negative thoughts about myself. And I think that this is where we really begin to start this incredible journey towards self-respect. And to me, self-respect is my own evaluation of the inner me. It's not an evaluation of the external things, of my skills, my talents, my achievements, my successes. To me, that's more my confidence. I have the confidence to pass exams, do well in the world, make money. It doesn't mean I like who I am. I feel comfortable with who I am as a person. And I sometimes feel that when I'm on my own, there's no one around me. I'm just with me and my thoughts. How do I feel? Am I comfortable? Because sometimes I can be universally loved and I can't love myself. I can be universally admired and respected, but I can't admire myself. I can be a high achiever. I do a lot and I do it well, but I feel a failure inside. This is just so incredibly common in this world because, I am, comparing myself. I have this incredibly high expectations of myself. And I hold these deep beliefs about myself. And sometimes I think the spiritual journey to nurture the truth in the heart of the self, the love, the purity, the humility, I've got to break these beliefs I hold. These powerful beliefs that I hold about myself, that I'm not lovable, that people won't love me. This belief can be so strong. So even when people offer me love, I can't accept it. I don't feel worthy for it. I don't feel I'm good enough for people to love me. Or the belief that I'm inferior. I would say the majority of the world holds this belief. So we see other people and we see their lives, we see something about them, I compare myself, and I always position myself inferior. So I have this inferiority complex. I have such a belief about my own inferiority. And then sometimes I feel people look down at me, but it's not the people looking down at me, I'm looking down at me. It's me who's looking down at myself. Or the belief that I'm just not good enough. No matter how well I do, it is never good enough. And, you know, sometimes some of us do things so well. We're so good at what we do. And yet it's always stressful because there's always this self-doubt, you know, eating away inside. And I would say that really this spiritual life, the deep work that we do here, it's wonderful, actually. It's like we're peeling away all the accumulated rubbish I've collected, the falsehood I've collected along the way, to really bring out that original jewel that will shine. And one of the facets of the jewel and the way it will shine is will shine with humility. And that means internally, I'm sitting in a place of deep self-respect, a lot of integrity, inner peace, self-value. I don't feel I have to prove myself to anybody. I'm comfortable with who I am. So I don't come out trying to get acknowledgement, trying to get you to praise me, respect me, acknowledge me, notice me, whatever it may be. No, I'm comfortable with myself. And as I was saying, that natural sense of humility is so incredibly attractive, I would say, totally attractive. But like all things in life, it's a journey, and this journey to humility is an incredible journey. And I feel that when we start this journey, most of us, perhaps we could say, have a gross ego. We all do, actually. Some more overt, some more covert. Some it's obvious, some it's not so obvious. Because all of us have built our life on a falsehood, a complete falsehood. I believe this falsehood is the reason for all the stress, anxiety, and discomfort. And that falsehood is that I'm a temporary body. And when I think I'm a temporary body, my whole sense of self is based on the external, how I look, what I wear, where I live, the name of my family, thousands of superficial and temporary things. And I think that when I begin my spiritual journey and I learn that in fact I'm an eternal soul, I'm not a temporary body. This is so incredibly powerful that almost instantly a lot of the gross ego, where I dress and things to attract people to myself, to pull people to myself, to be noticed, to be acknowledged, because I can't give it to myself. I want others to constantly, you know, give me that feedback. And so I let go of this gross ego. So it's one step to freedom and it's one step to humility. But there's many, many more steps, because I think we begin the spiritual journey, we begin the spiritual practice. And what does that mean? That really means that I start to meditate more regularly. I start to perhaps on the surface look a bit more simple. I'm not out there trying to pull people or attract people to who I am. But sometimes, you know, even on the spiritual journey, initially, I rebuild my ego without realizing it. So I let go the gross ego of perhaps, you know, how I look, and having the ego of my beauty and my family and my culture and my religion and all the things that we're all brought up and told that, oh, this is the best, you are the best, you are this, you are that. We let that go. And I realize I'm a soul. But actually, sometimes I build up a little bit of more subtle ego, if I can say. I let go the gross, but I rebuild the subtle. That I'm a spiritual person. And because I'm a spiritual person, maybe I'm better than other people, because I know these things and they don't know these things. So I've taken on a spiritual practice, but sometimes without realizing it, I develop some ego of my own spiritual practice. And sometimes, you know, in the Brahma Kumaris, we have this consciousness, we can say, or this network in my thinking, which we call the I and my network. I am this and this is mine. You know, this is the we rebuild this sort of subtle ego in life. So I am, and I have a whole set of labels that I am, and you are mine, this is mine, you know, this is my idea, my perception, my way of thinking, you know, and I have attachment. Ego is actually attaching myself to all these ideas, all these beliefs about myself and the world and others. And, you know, sometimes we start a spiritual journey and we fly along because I've let go of the gross ego, but the subtle ego comes back. And after a while, even on the spiritual journey, I'm not that happy. I sort of feel I've taken on meditation and self-awareness, but I'm not that happy because I've rebuilt my network of I and my, that I am better, I am right, the way I see things is the right way, etc. And this is where really, I think the true spiritual journey is even putting a death to the subtle ego, I would say. Really letting go even my subtle ego. And this is really the two steps which we need to do this. To go so deep into the idea of who I am. I absolutely let go identifying not just with my gross ego, my body and all the labels of my body, but even the subtle ego of even my virtues, my qualities, my achievements, letting it all go. And my whole foundation is based on that which is permanent. Who am I? I am an eternal soul. And this is, you know, a huge spiritual journey, I would say. And I often think that when we go to university out there, you know, we learn so much. You think we learn so much information. Most of us today, we're like an encyclopedia. We're like got an encyclopedia. You know, we know so much about so many things, but spiritual learning is so different. I take one idea. Who am I? And I go deeper and deeper and deeper. I unpack that truth. And you know, the more I unpack the truth that I am an eternal soul, a point of light that sits in the front of the brain just here. I'm non-physical. I'm immortal. I cannot die. I carry the story of my past in my subconscious. The more I unpack that truth, first, I know peace. Second, I regain my self-respect. And third, that is expressed in life as this really gentle humility. I'm not out there proving myself. I'm not out there to look good. I'm not out there to impress. I'm just quite comfortable with who I am. I'm completely comfortable with who I am. And I would say that first step is a massive step. That actually I've died from my gross ego of body consciousness. I've even died from the subtle ego that I can sort of rebuild, you know, trying to get my value from external things. And I come to this place of soul consciousness where I really begin to experience, know, shall I say, believe and experience who I am. The reality of life is that I'm an eternal soul and I sit temporarily in this body. And when I'm in this beautiful state of soul consciousness where I've let go my gross and subtle ego, I've started to really reconnect with my self-respect and my humility. And then I'm really, in a sense, ready to have this incredible union with God. And that really, when I, the soul, this point, look through the eye of the mind, the third eye, and I see the divine, I see God. I'm not just believing, I'm not worshiping, I'm actually in a real, living, loving relationship. It's a natural relationship, as real as I have with another person, except this relationship, the other party doesn't have a body. God doesn't have a body. God is a living soul. God is a real living being, a conscious being, a being that's totally and utterly lovable, a being that's egoless. So, shall we say, obviously the natural embodiment of humility. And really, when I feel loved by that being, completely and utterly loved by that being, it's like I feel full. I feel complete. I don't need anything. So I don't come into action needing to be noticed, needing to be respected, needing anything. I feel full. And that is like a state of humility, this beautiful, beautiful state of humility. And really, I think the more I have a loving relationship with myself as a soul, the more I have a loving relationship with God as a soul, automatically I'm full. I have my self-value. I feel I've come home to that place in myself where I belong. And the natural expression of that in life is humility. This is such a huge power. It is the absolute opposite of weakness. That when I'm humble, I will be loved. When I'm humble, I will be loving. I will express that love for everybody. When I'm humble, I will respect everybody. I will give respect to absolutely everybody. When I'm humble, I can let go. Things happen. People do things, and I can just let go and move on. When I'm humble, I can forgive. I can really forgive. And it's not just lip service, it's real. I just feel, well, if I hold on to all this behavior or what happened, I just ruin my life. The one with humility is so wise. I can forgive, I can let go. When I'm humble, I can deal with all types of personalities. You know, I don't take offense, I don't take insult, I don't take disrespect. I can cooperate. And I think that, you know, humility is really such an incredibly great spiritual power. And the wonder is often the greater the spirituality, the real spirituality, the more humility there will be. And as I was talking about, a lot of the sisters who are the heads of the Brahma Kumaris, we call them dadis, and a dadi means like an elder sister. And really, I could tell you, they were so great, because only one of them's left out of huge number. Most of them have passed on, but they were so great and so humble. You never, ever got the feeling they wanted any special privilege. You never got the feeling that they were better than anyone. They would always listen to anyone. They would even, you know, if someone disagreed with them, they're happy if someone would disagree with them, you know, and that is so attractive. It's so attractive in a leader. It's so attractive in a human being. And humility is, I would say, really one of the great powers of life. Perhaps we can call it being egoless. And, you know, I had this saying for myself that, you know, only my ego accepts sorrow. So whenever I feel hurt by something, upset by something, disturbed by something, I know I'm being deceived by my ego. That's my touchstone. But if things happen, people don't like you, people don't respect you, people don't value you, people criticize you, it's life. But if you don't take it on board, you know that really you are soul conscious, or you're in self-respect, or you're being humble. And I would say this is really one of the endpoints of the spiritual journey, breaking down, dismantling this ego that I've built up thinking I'm a temporary body. And slowly, slowly, as I practice meditation, practice being a soul, remembering the divine, remembering God, I come to this sweet place of humility. And my experience is, my observation is that the more people become humble, life becomes easier, just becomes naturally easier. So I'm going to wind up there. And I think, as you all know, as is our practice, if you would like to ask questions, it's lovely to have a bit of interaction. And so please feel free. And I think Jackie was saying that if you would like to ask something, just type it into the chat box. And she's happy to ask the question on your behalf. And if I can say that Jackie herself is a wonderful example of humility. She really is. And a very, very humble person.
One of the things, Charlie, I was thinking as you were talking, and how wonderfully you've presented this, to make such a power of humility that the world sees as being such a weakness, that when we have this sort of feeling of inadequacies ourselves, and we start on this spiritual journey, and we take on the lessons and study and experiment with them, and then at the other side there comes this feeling of self-respect and a dignity and love for the self. The result is humility. Because you can see what you were before and what you are now, and you can only feel humble and so grateful for this knowledge. There is a question. Can you please provide some practical tips to become humble? And
yes, I can.
Together, Charlie, what's the best practice to adopt humility? You've given a shortcut. Maybe you need to expand it.
You know, I think, as you were saying, Jackie, that in the world, you know, the sort of the aim in life for many of us, consciously or unconsciously, often to, you know, be rich, powerful, beautiful. You know, that's the sort of considered a successful life, you know, today, that even though a lot of us don't like that image, we buy into it consciously or unconsciously. But I think the real success in life is deep down to like who I am, feel comfortable who I am. That's not with arrogance, but it's that sort of sense of self-value. And I think that, you know, this whole journey, as I was really saying, to create humility, I've got to create self-respect. And to create self-respect, you know, I've got to practice the fundamental truth of who I am, not just believe. Because often I think that we have a very religious approach to the spiritual life. We just believe stuff. When we believe it, we think that's it. That's the first step of thousands to really, my own experience when I started was, I realized how incredibly body conscious I was. And I think that's a good thing, because that means you're starting to realize who you are. And the thing is, you don't have to try to have self-respect and be humble. You just have to try to be soul conscious, and it's a natural byproduct of those two. And I would say that to sort of tips, if I can use it, is when in your family and when at work, most of us, our ego is triggered by people's behaviors and people's comments. And, you know, I'm sure, Jackie, your experience at the center too, that when people come to our centers, you know, they want to meditate, but everyone has a library of experiences and stories about how they've been treated, what people have done to them, what people have said to them, etc. And it's stored inside as a lot of hurt and a lot of sadness and often a lot of anger. You know, these feelings. And I think that the more you become soul conscious and you see them as a soul, so rather than seeing them as my husband, my wife, my child, you know, this ownership stuff, I actually have a completely different vision. I start to see that each one is a soul. We're like actors playing their part. Each one of us is under the influence of my stuff. And in a way, just like I'm an actor, I'm under the influence of my stuff, and I start to have more mercy and understanding about myself. I begin to offer it to others too. So rather than jumping to incredible judgment and criticism and hurt and anger, I become more of an observer and just see that this person's under some influences. And often there's not much I can do. Sometimes I can, but often I can't. As we know, we can't really change others, but I can change my reaction to others. And if my reaction is one of humility, it disarms other people rather than, and it's a vibration you give them. So even though they may behave badly, they may say things, but you give them a vibration of love or respect, they soften and they will start to listen to you. But if I get hurt and angry and I yell at them, they won't listen to a word. They will start to yell back. So it's like I have to be a wise sort of psychologist in a way and understand that the more humble I become, I disarm people, I soften people, and people will start to listen to a humble person. They really will, because they don't get this vibration that I'm better and I'm right and you're wrong. All that vibration comes through ego. And that vibration, people won't listen to it, or people will reject it. But where there's humility, people will accept.
Thank you, Charlie. There's also a note of appreciation from someone who joins us from far distance. Such an important subject. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for sharing the starting point of self-transformation, as being rebuilding self-respect and the true love and beauty inside of all of us. This is lovely to hear you and lovely to see you. So I think this emphasis on rebuilding self-respect has been such an important one. And you said, to know and to believe and experiences is about feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the, I think in this spiritual life, easy to know, easy to believe. I think we're all people who, we like these sort of things, we believe them. I often feel the first step is to know, the second step is to believe. The next 998 steps are educating myself how to experience, how to transform my knowing and believing into experiencing. And that's what the spiritual journey is. And that's why I think, Jackie, we're living at a time where we have to practice soul consciousness. It's not just believe it. And that really means that I wake up in the morning and I sit quietly and I really almost feel myself sitting lightly in the forehead. I'm not a religion. I'm not, a role in a company, a title. All of those are what I do. They're not who I am. And when I let it all go and I really become the soul and I start to go about my life as a soul and seeing others as a soul, it's amazing how I start to experience more peace throughout the day. And almost you could say the law says the more soul conscious I am, the more humble I am naturally. So my vibration is unthreatening. My vibration is welcoming. My vibration is gentle. My vibration is accepting. My vibration is comfortable. It's almost like an invitation for someone to come in and feel comfortable with me. Humility is totally disarming. And I would say it's probably the most powerful power for human relationships, because the great destroyer of human relationships is ego. It's such a destructive energy. And look at, look at the countries in the world, the way they talk to each other these days. So arrogant, our way is right and you're wrong. And is there any wonder why they just constantly take offense from each other? And, I'm right and you're wrong. And everyone feels I'm right and you're wrong. The humble person really listens to the other and listens beyond the words and connects with where they're coming from and gives love and respect. And that love and respect, a humble person can really love and respect even the person against them, even the person who disagrees with them. And that's how they bring them around. They change their attitude.
I often think of like when we talk so much about experience and we talk so much about going deep into yourself, and it is this feelings, isn't it? It's exploring our feelings and experiencing our feelings.
Absolutely. I would say the whole of the study is really transforming our feelings. And when we transform feelings, then we transform relationships. If you want to improve relationships, transform your feelings. And we have to have feelings of love and cooperation, feelings of benevolence, feelings of belonging. We've got to give, we all know when you meet somebody and they give you those feelings of love and feelings of belonging, it's just, how do you feel? You feel like you've been invited into this sweet place. It's such a nice feeling. But if you get feelings of criticism, feelings of dislike, sometimes there's such strong feelings of dislike. And, we were talking about this recently, that when we dislike someone, it's actually selfishness. Why? Because they don't behave according to my rules. They don't act in a way according to my rules. Now, there may be some behaviors that are inappropriate socially, but I shouldn't generate feelings of dislike, because that is rejection. And really, that's the role of ego. Ego rejects, dislikes. You're no good, you're bad. That is violence. That is spiritual violence, emotional violence, which a lot of people get a lot of their lives. And so we're so sort of withdrawn sometimes because we're fearful of that vibration. The humble energy is the opposite of that. It's actually welcoming, respecting, understanding, listening. That is the energy of the power of humility.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlie. And there's more appreciative notes saying that it's actually, someone has said it's helped me to understand what's been happening at my workplace. And now I understand more what humility is, not subservience.
Not subservience. If I can just say one thing, Jackie, and, maybe, I don't know whether we need to continue on, but, I would say the religious style of humility is that bowing and scraping, that putting yourself below others, subservience. That's not humility. That's ego, actually. That is ego. But it's inverted ego. There's the ego of superiority and the ego of inferiority. So I'm putting myself down, hoping that you will approve me. No, that's not humility at all. Humility is real strength. And a humble person, if something is really inappropriate, a humble person can put a boundary around it, but will always be sweet, will always be loving and always respectful, but clear. So I can say, it's not the way I would do things. This is how I feel about it. I respect what you feel, but you can create a boundary. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're subservient. It doesn't mean you bow down at all. But when you express an opinion from a place of self-respect, it doesn't confront other people. But when you express it from ego, it's very confronting. It's very hurtful. It's uncomfortable. And that's where I think, I become soul-conscious, which gives birth to self-respect, which gives birth to the expression of humility through my face, through my eyes, through my smile. that vibration appears through who I am. And it's incredibly powerful, a humble person, really. And they're the ones that really create great leaders. People really love them and will follow, not through blind faith, but through really understanding some goodness.
Yes, I think while you were speaking, I was thinking how much understanding is necessary to create a good life and to create those inner resources, especially humility. Charlie, I think it would be lovely if you'd take us into an experience now through a reflection, and then we would close the session. It's been very enlightening.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you, everyone. Really lovely to be with you. And so just for a few minutes, I'll offer a few thoughts. Let us sit calmly and quietly. And for these few minutes, put down phones and devices. And let me keep my full attention. The power of humility is a great power. In fact, it is my natural state. To re-emerge a natural state of humility, I need to know and experience who I am. Visualize yourself as a tiny spark of life energy sitting in the front of the brain. Just visualize this radiant point of light. This is I, the soul. And when I know and realize who I am, my self-respect returns. And the natural expression of self-respect is humility. But when I forget I'm this eternal soul and identify with my temporary body, it gives birth to my ego of superiority and my ego of inferiority. And these are like a shadow that puts out the light of humility. Just feel yourself as the soul. So subtle. And in the state of soul consciousness, visualize the one relationship that's permanent. The relationship with the divine, with God. In the eye of your mind, see the divine as light, a radiant jewel of light, an ocean of love, an ocean of peace. eternally soul conscious and egoless. The more I turn my mind and feel love for God, I become like that one. I become soul conscious. And automatically, I express more humility in my life. Humility has the greatest influence in my relationships with others. The more I'm humble, I will be loving, I will be loved, I can respect, I can forgive, I can remain happy. In fact, humility is my natural state. We are now living in times of massive change in our world. And this means the more I practice soul consciousness and I connect with the divine, I feel with inner strength to be the person I want to be loving, to be humble, and to be kind.